Well, James Fetzer, let's go with the line that our guest there in Calgary is saying regarding Israel, in terms of wanting regional countries to be added to this list, and also at the same time, from what I understood, for them to have friction between each other, throwing Saudi Arabia against Iran, pitting themselves against each other through this being this court case. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do agree with that. And the representatives of the American Enterprise Institute have now acknowledged that the issue with Iran has nothing to do with nuclear weapons, but rather with it having an increasingly strong sphere of influence in the Middle East. Israeli newspapers are publishing that this court decision transforms our understanding of 9/11, but that's complete and utter rubbish. Steve Prisnick, who was a high official of the government in 5 different administrations, has observed that he was told by a high-ranking military officer, whom I believe to have been General Richard Myers, that 9/11 was an inside job and that Osama bin Laden died in December of 2001. At some point, these lies and charades have to come to an end. The United States is making itself look idiotic by presenting all of these claims, pinning all of these tails on the donkey, all of these countries. We might as well have heard that Libya was responsible for 9/11, or maybe next it'll be Russia or China. The situation is ridiculous.
And this involves manipulation on the part of the U.S., given the statements there made from you, James Fetzer, and our guest there in Calgary. Fuad Azadi, though, on Iran, it just appears that the U.S. is on a path of a smear campaign. Do you agree? I mean, you got the terror allegations. We talked about that. The IA report was mentioned by another guest. You have human rights violations. And at the same time, we're not seeing any concrete proof of it. Meanwhile, the U.S. has admitted it created the Taliban. It has admitted to funding anti-Iran terrorist groups like MKO and Jandala, not to mention violating Iran's airspace, which we know what happened with that CIA spy drone, which is one of several drones to have been sent into Iran. I mean, how can the U.S. defend itself when it's not even providing concrete proof?
I think this is more a sign of desperation. They have been bringing up this issue of Iran's nuclear program for the number of years, and they haven't been successful. They have been trying to sanction Iran for the last 30 years or so, and the results have not been what they were looking for. So these type of activities, bringing up new allegations, coming up with the stories for incidents that happened 10 years ago, and creating a situation that trying to make Iran look bad in the international scene is actually making the U.S. government look unsubstantiated. And these are the activities that the U.S. government is engaging in now, given what has happened in the last few weeks with the drone incident. Iran has shown that it has the capability of defending itself. Iran has shown that it's actually, in terms of technology, can do things that the U.S. Cannot do in terms of blocking Iran's advances against its drones and airplanes. So we have this type of Cold War that's going on between Iran and U.S. And when you hear these type of new allegations, I think you should put them in that context. The fact that the U.S. government has been trying to overthrow Iran's government for the last 30 years or so, and no matter which route they have taken, they have not been successful in that aim. And this is not going to be the end of it. They're going to be added. They're going to have new allegations. They're going to create new problems for Iran. And it's actually hurting the Iranian people more than anything else. And the Iranian side has shown clearly that's not going to respond well to pressure. And I think we have to see more movement from American intellectuals, university professors like the ones that you have on your program, and others, to point out to the fact that the U.S. government is taking the United States into a direction that's going to be very dangerous. Unless we have a popular movement against these type of allegations, I think the U.S. government officials will be at it more and more, and we are going to have a situation that we cannot really predict.
Well, I'll go with that notion that you talked about, unless you said, Mr. Fouad Izzadi, a popular movement. I believe there is one, Joshua Blakeney, that's happening inside the United States with the Occupy movements, of which criticizing the U.S. government for a host of issues, including the wars. So is that where hopes should be maybe pinned on when it comes to at least the foreign policy, which does drain, obviously, money out of the economy, in order to point out to the world on the double standards that the United States perhaps has, and we can refer to what appeared in this New York court?
Yeah, I mean, I think the ruling class in the United States are digging their own graves, and there's an increasing disconnect between the ruling class, the elite, you know, judges like Judge Daniels and the professors, you know, people, academicians in the United States who are just repeating the mythology of the global war on terror, and the people of the United States who are more and more educated. You know, there was a stereotype when I was growing up that Americans aren't intelligent, they're stupid, but that isn't actually borne out by the reality. I've traveled from coast to shining coast in the United States, and the United States people are highly educated. And I do believe that, you know, the degradation of our public institutions, I mean, we know that politicians and journalists are kind of bought and paid for and they lie, but when the judiciary and the professoriate fail to distinguish between fact and fiction when presented with evidence, then we're in a lot of trouble. You know, a lot of people said that, you know, with the failure of the Warren Commission to deal with the death of JFK, you know, what will come next? And what came next was 9/11. And many say now, well, with 9/11, what will come next? And, you know, we look at Fukushima, we look at the Norway incident, the massacre in Norway, in which the whole generation of labor activists were taken out, young children who would grow up to be left-wing, Norway being highly supportive of the Palestinian struggle. A professor in Norway now named Professor Tananda has just published an article this week in a peer-reviewed academic journal insinuating that Israel was involved in the massacre in Norway. You look at Japan, another country which collaborated with the Nazis in World War II, incidentally, and you see what's happened at Fukushima. Was that just completely coincidental? Are we allowed to be skeptical of these? I think we ought to. And I think it's such a shame that academics like Professor Fetzer and Professor Hall, my graduate studies supervisor, are so isolated. And why is it that academics are repeating time and time again these lies? Of course, Senator Frank Church did uncover in the Cold War in the 70s that up to 5,000 university professors and 3,000 journalists were conspiring with the CIA to spread disinformation against any country that wanted to express self-determination during the Cold War and call them, you know, communists or part of a Soviet conspiracy. So invariably it's the media and the professors who are the conspiracy theorists, and those of us like Professor Fetzer and I who are debunking state-sponsored conspiracy theories. And so I think we have to be highly vigilant as a people against the degradation of our public institutions by reckless elites.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much. Let me thank our guest, Professor of the University of Tehran, Fouad Izzadi. Many thanks. He was here in the studio with us. Scholars for 9/11 Truth, James Fetzer, thank you from Madison. I'd like to thank you from Veterans Today, Joshua Blakeney from Calgary, Alberta. And of course, you, the viewer, thank you so much for watching another edition of Press TV News Analysis. Any comments or questions? Newsroom@presstv.r is our email address. From Mikhail Tarvay and the entire team, it's goodbye.